Mr. Rajan, Mr. Vajat Habibullah, Board of Governors of the IILM Institute of Higher Education, faculty members, students. It's a great honor that you should have thought of me to chair this lecture. I don't think I deserve it at all. But I'm weakling and I sometimes accept friends writing to me and can't say no. And rather doddering old woman can't say no to people who say, will you come and chair and be a half-decorative figure. So here I am. And Rajan has been a friend, and why we giggled somewhat when Vajat was telling us about cutting trees and so on, because we shared a highly important and a highly hilarious moment when trees were cut in the tree. Tense moment of trees being cut, and I could do a replay of that moment, and that's why both of us couldn't resist sharing that. I'd also like to say how happy and touched and moved I was to be called on for a lecture dedicated to Srimati Indira Gandhi, but also because it was Vajat Habibullah who was going to deliver this lecture. And as Vajat said to you, we shared some years together working, but we shared other things, and apart from his very distinguished biodata from St. Stephen's College, Doon School, to being a member of the bureaucracy, to a director, and to being the secretary of the Panchayat Raj and PM Secretariat, and where he is now, I want to identify that part of Vajat Habibullah which he mentioned during the answers to some of your questions, because we share that concern, and that very deep concern, and also the commitment to that land, that piece of land which we call Kashmir or Kashmir. Because it is that natural and cultural heritage which defines the nature of both the environment, the glaciers and the snows, the rivers and the vitsatsas which flow out of that, and the communities from Ladakh to the Kashmiri Muslims or the Pandits or the Dogras or the Punjabis. And Vajat belongs to that land, and I happen to be also. And what we share is that natural environment which brought us up to love, to see the Pir Panchal or to see the Naga Parvat, to see the Hazrat Bal where he was attacked and had his accident, to know how people have lived together, and to know how people have been divided both from nature and from each other. Never in our childhood had we dreamed of this. And never had I forgotten those days of seeing Mrs. Indira Gandhi's father and the great frontier Gandhi move on horses in Gulmarg. Those are the childhood memories. personal as they may seem to you today, they're no longer personal. Because they represent what Vajat spoke about first and foremost, Mrs. Gandhi's commitment to the environment, because she was brought up in the lap of nature, whether it was in those sojourns in Kashmir or Himachal or wherever else she escaped to in the moment of great power. And what is it that this country teaches, whether the high and powerful or those who have lived in this country, as we are told 70% of India's population living below poverty line? And what does the philosophy of this country teach us? From the Vedas to the Upanishads, to the Gita, to the Puranas, to the Islamic heritage, to the Sufi heritage, to the poetry of Rumi, and on and on and on. That it is not Mr. Tennyson's nature read in tooth and claw, but it is man in nature, and the inanimate and the animate, the stones that speak to us, and the stories of the Panchatantra, of the Hitopadesh, are stories which tell us that wisdom is not the priority of this, the human species. And if Mrs. Gandhi internalized this and gave it a contemporary relevance and a concern, whether it was in that remarkable speech that she made in Stockholm, or in the action that Vajat has so lucidly placed before us in terms, it is only natural. It is unnatural for this country to think that environment is outside us. We are the creatures. We are one small particle of a major ecological universal system, a global system in which man has played a very important but not a singular role. Because of man's faculty of what some of you perhaps, I don't know whether you have a faculty of medicine or neurology or not, but because the manner in which our brain has been made to contain that other faculty called the mind, and that mind has that other faculty of memory which can be articulated in that other faculty called speech, cognition. And it is that which has given arrogance to man, because he thinks he can dominate. And it is on these aspects, and thus whether it is the tiger or the cheetah or that panda with whom we have all played in Timurti's house along with Panditji, it is part of that inheritance of a very long tradition of a vision of this country, of the culture and civilization of this country. And the moment we forget that, we are not only denying that legacy, but we are also making ourselves vulnerable to a destruction of the planet Earth, not only of this country. Whether it is a gourd or whether it is a Rajendra Pachauri who may have been today identified. But the greatest threat, no matter what, are achievements of man and science and technology. But we face a crisis of our own making, which humanity has not faced earlier. And whether it is from the schools of management or business, or commerce or marketing, or higher education, I urge you, your faculty members, that address yourself to this. And as I said, old woman can speak with some passion, because this is concern of the here and now. And it is given to you to find that balance between what we call a developmental economy and an economy which will have the basis of an ecological balance for the survival of the earth. That is, and it requires then a program in all disciplines of higher education, and I want to bring it down to your own institution. It's not a matter of a group of experts, of environmentalists looking at it. And let me then comment at another level, because I've also played the part of a bureaucrat along with them. And that is this tension that Vatsyayan spoke about between, or the initiative of the Ministry of Environment and Forests, and especially the Forest Act and the tribal issue. There is this understanding of what A constitutes the environment, and B, what was the Forest Act. And thank you Azad, for mentioning 1865. I could supplement that with most of our acts are 1864 acts by which independent India is running itself. These were at a certain historical moment. And the Forest Act, as you rightly said, was for timber, it was for the railways. And it came from a perception of the era of enlightenment across the Suez Canal, with that other, not footnote, the other perception that these were lower civilizational units, and one has written about it, and it needs to be identified in terms of your language and your presentation. And I want to just restrict myself to that, to make a footnote, because the natives had to be civilized. And historians write books about them. We don't understand how much it has impacted our own policies. Your case of the Lieutenant Governor or Commissioner is not a singular case, because we have inherited, and I am restricting myself strictly to your presentation of that, because it has restricted our perceptions in thinking that civilization means that educational process by which we come into what we, all of us sitting here, including me, let you self, have appropriated upon ourselves, that we are the mainstream of India, and those Andaman people and the Sauras and the whatever, and in the whole of tribal India is not the mainstream, and that if we have to, and don't you read every day, we are going to bring the Nagas into the mainstream. We are going to bring the Mizos into the civilized mainstream. We are going to tell the Sauras what they ought to be doing. And at the same time, we present them, and I am part of that history of being called by Mr. Nehru and Indira to do the Republic Day function in 1951. And I think, therefore, we have to rethink we think that there is a wisdom tradition in India, a wisdom tradition which goes beyond the articulated word, a wisdom tradition which sees man and nature in absolute symbiosis. And diversity means not only recognizing upside down diversity of caste, which we are, I don't know what's that thing we are doing, and class, but diversity means and recognition of the optimum skills and perceptions of different groups of people at different levels of development. This is India, where if I call him a leather technologist, then he is in the developmental branch. If I call him something else, then he is in the Dalit. And we have to sort out these contradictions in our own perceptions. And that is what Mrs. Gandhi was trying to do. And I could sit here or stand here to give you several personal anecdotes on that. How the skills of a bronze maker and of our Kolhapuri chappals has to be equated with other skills that we recognize. And that was the sensitivity with which she knew her India. And that is why in one of her lectures, she says, if you want to know anything about India, first and foremost, empty your mind of all, any kind of statements or perceptions that you have, because this, despite all definitions, each time you know that you belong to this, you have to question yourself into knowing that this is a dynamic system in constant flux, and you have to have the humility to know what you can contribute. God has given us some wonderful glimpses, and thank you, Radha, and thank you.